So I think there's two ways to view, there's probably a lot more ways, but these are two idealistic ways to view research at the PhD level. And I want to talk about these and then hopefully give you a different perspective that I think is perhaps based on a lot of wisdom. So the first view is based on the idea that you simply have to put your nose to the ground and you have to look at the world and study the world, figure out what the world says about this particular phenomenon, and then report on it. A second view is that you have to look at this as a political process, that actually doing research is about who you actually know and who you're actually connected to and what resources that they have actually access to. And now that I've been doing the whole research game a lot more, I think I actually ascribe to the second one. I never really believed in it as much. I believed in the sort of meritocracy of things, of the scientific research process, but I actually think that there's a lot more that's going on behind the scenes that's very difficult to uncover and for all of us to explain just based on merit alone. There's lots of situations where there's people that are very closely matched that often get resources that other people don't because of other things that are associated not to merit. And I think that this is closely tied to a lot of things that we talk about in much of popular culture today and how people view these particular outcomes in terms of what is actually happening. And because research is not necessarily about the research itself, it's about the connections that you have and the various different resources that you're at your fingertips, then some of us get kind of frustrated and it's very difficult to actually do the work. And that's why I actually built the whole reciprocity platform. And that's why you can go on to it. The E is written with a 3 is because there's issues with motivation, issues with actually getting the work done that are very difficult to address in the way that we're currently addressing it. That's what the platform is all about, is for everybody anywhere to get access to those particular resources. And hopefully I'm trying to change that. But that's a long-term play that I have. So how can I actually change this, or how can you actually change this? I think it's working on other things in terms of your perspective on the world. So normally at the end of a long work day when I'm doing research, I get really grumpy and I get really, really depressed because I start thinking about all of these effects that are going on. And that is pretty normal for me. And what I've learned is that I need to detach from a lot of the work world and a lot of the research world so I don't feel nearly as bad and I can get up in the next morning. So I do things like right now, hopefully I'll get a little bit of a swim and then I'll have dinner tonight and not think about a lot of the research game. Try to push that stuff away so I spend some time actually doing some homework with my kids or doing things that I actually enjoy. I think at least for me, when I get caught up and I start thinking about these two views and I get very, very frustrated, it's because I'm actually focused on my work too much and I need to take a step back from my work. The more that I start pondering about all these different effects and why, despite the fact that I might sit there and work a lot, that it doesn't pan out the way that it may seem for other people, then I got to take a step back and I got to realize that, you know what, there's a lot more to this world than actually the work itself as a researcher. And I think if you're like me and many other people that have been in the game for a long time, you begin to realize that, yes, there are things that are outside of the research world that are squishy, that people will discount and will probably make you less of a researcher in some people's eyes. But that's okay. It helps you to get forward, helps you to establish and ground yourself. I know a lot of people get into the whole religious thing. That's not me. I get into things like swimming or walking or trying to escape and find different ways where I have to regroup and love myself again despite all of this. Because ultimately, what you'll find out is that work is not forgiving. It's not going to actually love you back at some point. What actually does is the fact that you can do all of these other things to make yourself a little bit more grounded so that you can walk forward the next day. I think it's incredibly important for everybody to have other things that are going on in your life, whether it's family, religion, sports, or any number of different hobbies, or even just watching TV. You need those escapes so that you don't get caught up in everything that the world is actually telling you. It's healthy to detach. It's healthy to find other things in your life that are more meaningful than the work itself. So I encourage you to realize that, yes, there are a lot of effects that are outside of your control. And yes, there's probably only about 4, maybe 5 reasonable hours that you can work in a given day where you're actually doing your thing. And the rest of it you should reserve for things that are far more important in your life. And I encourage you to do that every single day. Practice that every single day. Because you know what? All of a sudden you're going to look up and you're going to be 50, 60, 80, 90 years old and realize you spent all of your time worshiping at a scientific method that actually doesn't necessarily care about what you're actually doing. And you have to take a step back and realize that you're okay at any given moment. I encourage you to work on all of these squishy things that are not about performance, that are not about you getting things done. And it's all about you just figuring out how to live and manage and survive in this crazy world that we call science.